So it's great to talk about archaeology at La Sierra University, which actually had its roots in the early 70s with Kenneth Vine. Kenneth Vine was part of the Caesarea Maritima project in Israel and ended up focusing on lamps. That was his primary thing. And we actually have a number of his records of lamps, the detailed data sheets, not so many lamps, but we have the information and the photos and slides galore from Kenneth Vine. He was terrific. He was really energetic. He was also extremely enthusiastic publicly. He was a cheerleader for archaeology at La Sierra. Bailey Gillespie joined him on that project, was one of the organizers, administrators. He not only excavated, but he was one of the administrators of the project. So those two were responsible for some of the early days of archaeology at La Sierra. The 1990s saw the arrival of Larry Garrity as president of La Sierra University. And in the process, he brought with him his own expertise and background, long history of background, back to the late 60s in archaeology, primarily in Jordan, but in other places as well. And so when he came, there's a kind of a raised signal and a volume level of archaeology at La Sierra. However, he did not feel he wanted to give precedence to archaeology in the curriculum. He felt that he really needed to be even-handed across the board with different disciplines and departments. And so there was not a lot of favor given to archaeology, but it did raise awareness in general. And in the process, I think opened some new doors as well. At the time, he was one of the co-directors of the Madaba Plains Project, Tel El Ameri. I mean, he was at the very beginning of what came to be known as the Madaba Plains Project back in the late 1960s at Tel Haspan. And so he was continuing to work on this project and was one of the co-directors. And so he brought to La Sierra this expertise, this experience, this awareness of the value of archaeology on its own terms, scientific terms, but especially in terms of how we relate it to the biblical material. In the early 2000s, Bob Bates came to La Sierra and was the archaeology professor, created an enthusiastic group of students. It was incredible how he rounded up students and got them enthusiastic about archaeology. And these students would come on our excavations. They were engaged at every level at the university and overseas with archaeology. And Bob was brought to La Sierra to organize that massive collection of thousands of pieces after the reception of this massive donation of artifacts from a businessman in Jerusalem. And I came into the picture in the mid-2000s, early 2000s. And I was happy to join the campus and brought some of my background as well. And then Camp Bramlett, who's our primary archaeology teacher at present, came in 2010. He came with a brand new 2009 PhD from the University of Toronto and has made good use of that, has become our specialist in ceramics, a ceramicist, and in reading, what we call reading the pottery, to find out dating information. So he brought that expertise. This is the history that undergirded the current Center for Near Eastern Archaeology.